They will not leave disappointed. This guy is unique, special, and we are privileged to be here today.
After 2 years of holding on post Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert trade, the Utah Jazz finally let go of the rope. 17-65 last season, struggling to maintain 20 wins, the Jazz finally decided this offseason to trade most of their bulky veterans to allow the young guys to play. As a result, I think the Jazz are going to finish last in the Western Conference, but they're still an interesting team, right? Bryce Sensabaugh is a great shooter who can become an elite shooter now that there's more of an offensive Bryce Sensabaugh is a great shooter who could become even better now that there's more of an offensive role for him with guys like Jordan Clarkson and John Collins gone. There's more offense to absorb, so that allows guys like Sensabaugh, first round pick Ace Bailey can jump into the mix and immediately impact this team. And I am super high on Isaiah Collier as a long term piece. Shot 69% at the rim as well as a 34% assist rate, so he intrigues me. I think overall the Jazz here are a questionable team, a team that I think long term are still looking for the pieces that make them great, whether it's trading Laurie Markkinen and trying to find another asset for draft picks to do that, or maybe it's developing a Bailey, a Sensabaugh, a Collier this year, and then hoping to get the ping pong balls correct next year. Overall, I think the Jazz are going to be bad this year, but there's a lot of hope for them. I'm more curious to see what they do with a guy like Walker Kessler, right? Or Keontae George. Two guys who are approaching restricted free agency status. I think George is going to be on the outs, right? You consider they drafted Walter Clayton Jr., they got Collier from last year's draft. I just don't see the space for him developing into anything more than a backup. Maybe a team takes a shot on him, trades for him mid-season to get his restricted rights, but he doesn't seem like a shooter, much of a shooter. Doesn't seem like a combo guard either. He seems more like a point guard who can kind of create shots and maybe play a little bit more off ball than you think. So I can see him getting traded. I would also wonder if they trade Walker Kessler. Walker Kessler is pretty good, right? He's like a really good dynamic big man who, me personally, I would just extend him. I think even as the Jazz are bad, having a good defensive focus at the center position allows them to kind of speed that process up. It allows you to understand what you need and what you don't need and how these guys kind of figure into a defensive structure. So me personally, I think Walker Kessler would be an interesting guy for like 4 years, $64 million, if the Jazz can do that. But overall, I'm looking at the Jazz, and I think they're the 15th best team in the Western Conference, which is last. But I'm excited about some of the young players and some of the potential processes they can go through this season, some of the things that they avoided the last 2 years. So I think the best way to put it is that the Phoenix Suns kind of fell short of expectations once they traded for Kevin Durant. Last season's 36 and 46 record ultimately ended up with Durant getting traded to Houston. Now the Phoenix Suns are kind of in this weird space where, are they competing? Are they trying to develop and add assets? What is the ultimate plan for the Phoenix Suns? I'm not quite sure, but I still feel like they're one of the worst teams in the Western Conference. It starts like this. They traded Kevin Durant. They got back Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, 4 first-round picks. I'm fine with that. Ultimately, and the 10th overall pick that became Kalman Malik. Ultimately, Brooks is going to be a good player for them. I think Jalen Green's position and what he does is going to be a question mark until we actually see what's going on. We've had talks about Devin Booker playing a point guard role, which is fine, but ultimately he's still going to put the ball in his hands. He's going to score. He's going to make the best decisions. I think that ultimately decides on what's next for Jalen Green, right? Signed that weird rookie contract, a good rookie extension, but one that kind of made it pretty much assured that he was getting traded from Houston. Can he improve his game? Is there more there? I just feel like we've seen the ups and downs, almost like a roller coaster of Jalen Green's career, where it's like you put the ball in his hands, he can score it, and then there's just random moments where he's just not the guy at all. Actually terrible at points, right? I like their defensive young core of guys. We talked about Malik, Man from the University of Duke. They selected him with the 10th overall pick. I think he can be an effective defensive rim protector right away. for the Suns, but they also made a weird trade in trading for Mark Williams. They gave up the 27th overall pick and a 2029 first round pick. This is the issue of what I'm talking about, right? That balance between, are you trying to compete now, or are you trying to push things out long term and figure things out? I think Williams is a good player when he's healthy. I think he's a good rim protector. I think he's a good rim runner, so he can dunk. He can make some good dunks. He makes some good blocks on the defensive end. I think he's a smart defender as well. Underrated passer as well. There's a lot of things to like here. The issue is that he's a restricted free agent at the end of the season, so you kind of have to pay him, and he always gets hurt. So you really don't know what you got there long term. Between him and Malik, you have two good centers. You add Nick Richards in as a third center who can give you some minutes. You have talent there, but I'm just not sure why they invested 3 first-round picks and 2 centers at a time where there's so much uncertainty, right? Regardless, they added Fleming in the second round, who I really like. I think he's a talented defender. He was really good at St. Joe's. You add him to Ryan Dunn, to Oso from last year's draft, and I'm interested into seeing what the Suns are going to try to do there with that defensive unit. They don't have many draft picks to work with, but it seems like whenever they draft young players, there's a lean towards being good defensively. And that young core could potentially be a part of whatever the Suns are trying to build moving forward, right? Dylan Brooks is going to be good. Cameron Malik is going to be good. I'm curious to see what they do with guys like Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal, 2 leftovers from the previous era. I think they can shoot the ball. I think they could provide value right away, but I think ultimately what lingers in the back of the Phoenix Suns' mind is, do we trade these guys and get assets? Because so many of their first-round picks are held up. They have draft picks held up from 2026 through 2031. They just don't control any of them. So it's like you really can't tank, but you really can't commit to this roster because you have to find something to do, right? And credit to them for getting out of the second apron by waiving Bradley Beal, not taking back too much in the Kevin Durant trade. But I just think right now we are on a point where we have to start having conversations about what's next for Devin Booker more than anything interesting on this Suns team. I think the Suns will be bad this year, and ultimately that'll lead to even more questions about Devin Booker's future. But on the other side, I do kind of like some of the young guys they have on the roster. It's tough to believe in the New Orleans Pelicans, right? The thing is that when this team is healthy, they actually have all the pieces that you want, right? Zion Williamson, a healthy Zion, you're a playoff team. He's a top 30 player in the league. Trey Murphy, Herb Jones. You got guys here. The issue is that you can't trust the system, right? Several players got hurt. I think the
head coach Chris Finch watching on from the baseline. To our left, New Orleans winning the jump. And Jeremiah Fears, that's a nice looking three-pointer. Good back and forth game, a series of runs here in the second quarter both ways. The speedy Fears off 1 foot that time connecting. We came in talking about the second-year guys, and there'll be a lot of discussion about Berger, and that time EBC.
Like to swap with either New Orleans or Milwaukee to Atlanta for their first-round pick and the ability to move up 10 spots in the draft to take Derek Queen. I think everyone likes Derek Queen, right? Very talented big man out of Maryland, very creative, good passer, a bit of a bruiser around the rim, but his creativity and ability to, generate shots is really good. But overall, I just think the frustration here is that you gave up a huge asset and you kind of bled assets the last few years, right? You look at the Dyson Daniels give up when you got Dejounte Murray. You look at even smaller trades where it's just like you're giving up future first-round picks down the line to take Steven Adams and trade Steven Adams. That was years ago. But I just think this team had a very stacked asset list, and it has slowly shrunk over the last couple of years. Even then, they took Jeremiah Fears with the 6th overall pick. I can't be mad at that because I think Fears is really good. I just kind of worry about who's starting at point guard for this team, whether it's Fears to start, whether it's Jose Alvarado to kind of be a bit of a placeholder, your generational 5th starter per se. But that's my biggest concern with the Pelicans. Interesting moves in the offseason when you look at the Pelicans roster, right? They fired David Griffin. They hired Joe Dumars to take over his spot. I think that's a weird move. Dumars came in. First thing they did was the Jordan Poole trade. They traded C.J. McCollum second-round pick for Jordan Poole. I think that's a weird fit, right? Poole was pretty good last year. I think for what he is as a player, he was pretty good last year in kind of revitalizing his career, and he continues to be a nuclear shooter, and his ability to handle the ball allows him to create mismatches on the perimeter, especially against non-good defenders, right? If your defender's poor, he can kind of take advantage and attack and either get to the rim or create some space to get a jumper off. I just think that's a weird fit for what this roster is, right? They also made the Kevon Looney pick, selection. They signed him to a 2-year, $16 million deal. I like that move. I think Kevon Looney has been a solid player for years now, and I do think they kind of need just some veteran leadership there, right? But you just drafted Yves Missy 12 months ago. You made it a mission not to start acquiring a center, and now you kind of have these two weird centers, and you have this weird center in front of them, and you still have this like glut of forwards. So where does Missy play, and how are you developing a potential first-round pick? Is my general question here with the Kevon Looney move, right? Ultimately, I have the Pelicans one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference because I just don't know what their starting five is. I don't know what their best five is, right? Dejounte Murray is going to be out presumably for the entire season. If not, the second half, he'll see some time maybe near the end. Some people predicted January, but it's just like, man, if he comes back in January, that is just a weird fit. But it's just like you have Jordan Poole, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, Kevon Looney, Yves Missy, Jose Alvarado, Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen, right? Like all those guys, a lot of them feel one-dimensional to me. A lot of them feel like they do one thing really well. None of them feel scalable. Like you don't really have a small ball lineup. You don't really have creativity with these guys, right? Like Zion is such a tough player to fit things around. You kind of just play him at the 4, which means you kind of just play Trey Murphy at the 3, which means you play Herb Jones at the 2. Are you playing Jordan Poole at the 1? You just acquired him. Are you playing him at the 1 and kind of allowing the shot creation around him to kind of overlook his inability to be a point guard? Or are you starting Jose Alvarado? Who gets on the bench? Are you putting Herb Jones, who you just signed an extension with? Are you putting him on the bench for Jordan Poole? I don't like that defensively. You know, what about Trey Murphy? Trey Murphy has been a breakout candidate for 3 years now. You're just not going to suddenly put him on the bench. I just think this is a weird team that kind of is stuck in two different phases, right? And I think the weirdest thing is that when Zion Williamson is healthy, he's a top 30 player in the league. They should build around him. That guy is amazing. One of the best inside scorers in the league. But I kind of feel like this kind of tandem is it doesn't fit anymore. So I'm curious to see what they do. It's tough to trade Zion Williamson, especially after the hype of him being a generational prospect, getting him shortly after losing Anthony Davis. But I just feel like I wonder if the Pelicans would be more interesting if they got rid of Zion. And maybe based off what's going on now, that may come to a close, right? If they have another losing season, they have to kind of consider what they want to do with him as a player and both as an asset. So I'm down on the Pelicans this year, but I do want to admit that they have a ton of talent, and sometimes talent just figures it out, right? So I'm curious to see if they can prove me wrong, but the Western Conference is full of bullies, and I'm just not sure if the Pelicans can put everything together on top of the fact of avoiding the injury bug for a second straight year.